Perfect. Okay. So welcome. We got the live stream going too. So welcome everybody to It's Not Just You, where we answer burning questions from women in tech and other male dominated industries. Our questions today: what do you do when leadership won't solve a well-known problem? And how can I thrive when my teammates are vocal about their achievements while I am reserved? Why do we do these? I've spoken to about 1,500 women over the past year. I speak at women's employee resource groups and women's groups, and I keep hearing the same set of questions come up around perfectionism that's leading to burnout, around setting and maintaining boundaries, finding and then using your voice, and then how to get it all done and still have a life. Like they fall into these really specific categories of things. And so I started this so that we could get together and just answer these questions collectively, because I like to say we're all ducks on a pond, right? And we're all gliding gracefully across the top of the water while we're furiously paddling underneath. So what I want to do is get all of this out in the open so that we can all feel a little bit less alone and also get some answers to these questions that sometimes we're afraid to ask or don't feel embarrassed to ask. So we've got a couple things coming up next month for housekeeping things. So next month, we're going to do a masterclass called Feeling Accomplished and Confident When You Can't Do It All. And that's going to be on September 13th, 11 a.m. Pacific time. Amy will drop that link if you're joining us here live on the Zoom. If you're watching on the live stream, but you want to be here live on the Zoom, because we're going to do some awesome networking after we wrap this up, then you should join at the Zoom link, wherever that is on your screen right now, if you're on the live stream. All right. Drop your comments in the chat. I love a lively chat. All right. Let me I just want to have the chat open so I can see what y'all have to say when you're ready to do it. Okay. Perfect. Now, got all my things exactly where I need them to be. So if you're here on the live stream, you can join in the chat. If you want to register for the next one and make sure that you get that Zoom link, go to my website at unboundandunbothered.com under free events. You'll find the link to this, the link to the masterclass. All of the awesome things are right there on the website. All right. So let's just dive right in. I'm ready to get to it this week. I love these questions. They're really great. So what do you do? So question one, what do you do when leadership won't solve well-known problems? So let's break it down. Our nervous system is often triggered by something in our socialization or the way that we grew up. And when these situations come, it'll often create a predictable number of responses. We'll people please, we'll have the inner critic will start going wild, we'll go into perfectionist overdrive, or we'll get stuck in self-doubt and indecision. When we're talking about what do you do when someone else won't solve an issue? So there's a lack of control that's going on there that we just need to acknowledge, like this thing should be fixed. I believe it should be fixed and it's not being fixed. And so there can be a number of things at play. You can be in a fight response where you're anger and frustrated, and that can either be directed outward or inward, or you can be in a fawn response where if something's not getting fixed and you feel responsible for other people's comfort, then you want that thing to be fixed so that everyone around you can be comfortable. When we're talking about how socialization can trigger those responses, and I want to step back for just 1 second, because I think and I meant to say it right at the beginning of this, there is one thing that's completely outside the realm of thought work in this situation, where simply you're not paid to care. And that can sound really mean or selfish or whatever, but you're paid to go in and do what you're asked to do each day. A lot of times we don't even get to define what our job is, because sometimes you think it's my job to make sure that this thing gets done. It's your job to do whatever you're asked to do on any given day. And then the frustration comes when you think this is something that I should be able to solve, or this is something that other people should solve for me. That creates anger and frustration, but only for you. The caring only creates a problem for you, because we see people like Chad doesn't care. Chad's like, not my problem, and can just go on with his day, right? So when we're talking about something of anger and frustration or disappointment or confusion or whatever's going on in this situation, a lot of times it's because we've decided something should be a certain way and then it's not. And so every time that we notice that, then we feel some level of frustration or disappointment or whatever the feelings are. But those are only happening to us. And maybe other people agree. Like the person who asked this question was asking about a well-known problem, right? So other people agree. So there might be something where people are chit-chatting here and there about this thing that's not getting done, where you're, each expressing your frustration to each other and perhaps not to the people who should be changing it, right? In your opinion. But I want to just lay that out there that you're not paid to care. It's not a requirement. The requirement is you go and you do what's asked of you. And sometimes those two things can be in opposition. Okay. So let's talk about the socialization aspect of this, right? And it feeding into us having that fight response where we're either turning it into an inner critic or maybe we're creating waves within interpersonal waves within the company, or the fawn response where we feel responsible for other people's comfort. So socialized, I say this pretty much every time we get together like this, but for women, we're validated and praised for our appearance and for caretaking. And so we don't get any validation cookies when when we prioritize our comfort ahead of other people's, right? So it might be confusing in this situation where we think we care about how other people feel. We care about something operating smoothly here. Why doesn't leadership care? But again, that question is only creating frustration with you, because if leadership cared truly, if they had the ability to make the change, if they cared to make the change, we will never know what's driving this problem not being solved. But our idea that they should be solving it is only creating a problem for us. And I'm going to keep coming back to that because I think that's the really, really important part of what I want to do when I answer these questions is help you find a way to feel in control of a situation and not feel like that you're at the mercy of all of these other things, that your mental health and well-being is at the mercy of other people doing or not doing certain things. So what's going to happen in here? Well, we're going to feel frustration and anger, right? We might start creating waves to our own detriment. Like, this was me. It would probably still be me for sure, it would still be me if I hadn't discovered mindset work or thought work and really started realizing like how much discomfort and frustration and anger and everything that creating that, like how much it was harming me and not really changing anything. It was taking a lot of my energy, but not really changing anything. But I was definitely the one who was going to make waves. I was going to be the squeaky wheel. I was going to bring it up at every opportunity that I got that this thing's not fixed. Who's not fixing it? And I thought, oh, I'm just a person who's willing to speak up and take a few bullets. But like my idea, the wanting it to be having an idea of how things should be and then arguing with the reality of how they actually are only created problems for me, both inside me and interpersonally, pretty much any place that I ever worked. Or we might be confused. We might be trying to rationalize the irrational. Where you're just like, if I just could understand why this wasn't being fixed, then I could feel better. But as long as no one's getting fired, some things will never change in a company. And that can sound like really dark, but if no one's getting fired, it's not really a problem, right? People will take care of things when their own survival is at risk. And then if it's a difficult thing, if it's a problem that's really hard to change, or there's a lot of opposition or whatever, there's not resources, whatever the reason is for it not being changed, then the status quo will always win. It will always win. If you're still getting your job done, even if it takes you like a whole bunch more hours to do it, no one's getting fired for that. Ashley said, oh man, can anyone else relate? Starting my last position, there were so many obvious issues to me, and I felt like a crazy person who kept on speaking up about it. But like Gretchen said, it was really only impacting me negatively. Yeah, I didn't realize this. I just thought, no, like I'm just really dedicated. I'm passionate, right? Like I really thought that this was so important. And if I let the ball drop, then I don't know, terrible things were going to happen. So yeah, Ashley, I think a lot of people can relate to this one. So That brings me to the last thing when we're talking about the feelings. Like, one question to ask yourself is, do I want to make this my problem? Is this problem so important to me? Right. And we can get into this kind of where we can try to rationalize that it's my job. Well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. Right. It might be, you might think I could be getting my job done more efficiently. And then I would get to be able to work on these other things if you would get me this piece of software or solve this friction point or whatever. Right. But as long as nobody's getting fired, right. Do you want to make it your problem? All right. Amy said, yes, Gretchen and I worked at a few of the same places. Yeah, she knows. Amy has seen me like create a lot of waves over many, many companies. Yeah. All right. So, behaviors that are going to come up. So, think about this. Of course, we're frustrated when we're doing our jobs and it seems like other people aren't. Of course, we are. That makes sense, right? Of course, we feel angry or betrayed when we're not getting the thing that we need, when the problem isn't being solved, when it's creating issues for us, when we think I would be so much more effective at my job if this were solved. Why does no one care? Of course, we're going to feel angry and betrayed because we're showing up trying to do our best every single day. And it feels leadership or some other part of the organization isn't holding up their part of the bargain in the same way that we are. Right. So those are very, very real, rational responses, right? It's just, what do we want to do with it? Do we want to hold on to it and make our day-to-day lives frustrated and feeling angry? Or do we want to process that feeling of anger or betrayal and then move through it and move forward? And of course, we care about doing our jobs. Of course we do. And we expect that other people care too, right? But caring is optional. And caring that much is creating a situation where you just don't feel good about going to work every day. Then you need to like think about, how do we intervene in here? How do we find a different way to look at the situation that makes my day-to-day life better? All right. So what happens when we start doing this stuff? We internalize the frustration and we complain about it with our peers, which impacts our morale and other people's morale. And not that a good bitch session isn't warranted now and then, but if you find that you're getting together and complaining about the same things all the time, is that beneficial to you? Is it beneficial to anybody, really? We call it out and then we risk retaliation, right? Like, I've got myself in so much hot water, I couldn't even begin to tell you how many times I've done this. Or we make a problem that we didn't create and we make it a problem. We create a problem for ourselves and we didn't create the problem, right? We just acknowledged that this exists and shared it with someone who we thought would have the authority and the desire to fix it. But we also don't have the authority to solve it. So we didn't create it and we don't have the authority to solve it. That's why you feel so frustrated. So you have to just let go of control of that. Of, this isn't something I created. It's not something I have the authority to solve. The only thing I have control over is how I look at this situation right now. Okay. Here are my tips for you to try on this one. Remind yourself, I'm not paid to care. I'm paid to do whatever I'm asked to do, whether that I think that's stupid or not. And that would be my thing of, no, that's stupid. We have to fix it. No, that's stupid. We have to fix it. So much trouble that I got myself in over that. Try a thought like, I can not put myself in the line of fire and still be a great team player, right? I can still be dedicated to my job without being the person who's going to take a bunch of hits over something that ultimately they're not going to have any control over solving. I can not involve myself in an issue and still be great at my job. It doesn't mean that you don't care. It doesn't mean that you're not doing a good job. It just means that I don't have any control over this. I'm going to let it go. Thanks, Shannon. She said this is really useful. Awesome. All right. And then the last tip that I'll offer on this one is just watch the shoulds and coulds and woulds. As much as I advise y'all to not judge yourself with those words, they create that same sense of anger and frustration when we turn them externally, right? And they should be doing this. They could do so much more than they're doing right now. If only they would just do this one little thing, right? Like, just think about when you're using those words, what kind of feelings and emotions that, yeah, actually I can send them out. I'll send them out and written out as a follow-up, or here, I can even post them in here right now so you can have them. But yeah, that's a great ask for sure. All right. Posting those in the chat. Okay. But you want to really watch those shoulds, coulds, and woulds in any situation, right? Because particularly if we think another person should or would be doing them, yeah, Asha's going to post them around your office. It will take the stress down on this sort of thing, right? It'll just give you some space and it'll set you free from a thing that you feel like has control over you right now. All right. So that was question one. So we are going to drop into question two. How can I thrive when my teammates are vocal about their achievements while I am reserved? I love this one. And it comes up so much. So, what's going on in our nervous system is a freeze response in this situation, right? We feel paralyzed or the words are stuck in our throat. But there are so many different reasons why we might get to that freeze response. I think that's what's really, really great about this question, why I was really excited to answer it. So, if you grew up in a household where there was like a strong sense of competition or there was a healthy debate over dinner every night, your tolerance, your emotional resilience, your tolerance for discomfort, for failure, right? If you're in a competitive environment or for people disagreeing, right? You're going to develop a really high emotional tolerance, a high emotional resilience for those kinds of discomforts that can be really, really rough on people who grew up in a house where everything's swept under the rug. Nothing to see here. Everything's fine, right? We don't ever have a disagreement. And therefore, we never build the resilience for a natural thing that's going to happen where people disagree. Or you grew up in a household where modesty and the power of the collective was so much more valued. And it was considered shameful or embarrassing for people to brag about themselves. Like, why would you put yourself out there? We're all in this together. Why would you try to stand out that way? And that can be embarrassing. And if you grew up with that as a value, then if you find yourself in a workplace where what a leader looks like or who gets the promotion or whatever are people who are going around doing this thing that you've never done and also have an actual visceral reaction to like how gross that looks when other people do it, then that's where the challenge and the disconnect is going to come in. And then you can bring in another layer of like boy groups and girl groups starting around the age of 4 or 5. So cooperate in boy groups around that age, there starts being an alpha and a hierarchy and a lot of competition for the alpha. So in boy social groups, very broadly speaking, this is a thing. This is why failure can sometimes seem like it has a greater impact on women. I think we did a couple weeks ago a question on this, right? About like, why does it seem like men can bounce back from things so quickly while I feel like I'm really like, it's weighing me down that I made this mistake, right? Or that I messed this thing up or that it didn't go the way that I wanted it to, right? But it makes sense that if you've spent a lifetime competing, that any kind of failure is going to seem a lot easier. So in girls' social groups, cooperation is valued over competition. Standing out and being competitive and trying to make yourself better than the other people around you, that's going to feel really uncomfortable, right? Or in girl social groups, humbleness is valued over confidence. So you want to stay humble, you want to be modest, right? And so if you've got that family thing layered on top of the female thing, like that is going to create a space where this feels profoundly uncomfortable, right? And what we want to do is there's this idea of here's your area of comfort, right? This is where we don't try new things. We don't, right? But we can stay really comfortable. We don't have to feel any discomfort. And then the area of discomfort that's around that, if we think of these as like concentric circles, right? This is where we want to be, that level of uncomfortability that gets us to the next thing that we do. But we don't want to go so far that we feel panic or we shut down or we feel like out of control and it makes us stop. Then we get into that freeze response, right? So we want to just push our comfort out a little bit. We want to get out of this safe zone where we don't get to grow, but we don't want to go so far that we panic or shut down. And so the tip that I'm going to give you towards the end is really going to help you build that emotional resilience that I've just been talking about a lot right now. Okay, what happens? What kind of things that we're feeling? We're feeling embarrassment and shame. We even feel embarrassment and shame on behalf of other people. If we grew up in a very like where modesty was very valued, then when people are tooting their own horn, that can actually we can feel embarrassed for them, right? This is really uncomfortable to watch you act so foolish, right? Or we feel insecure and isolated because we think we're the only ones that are having a problem finding and using our voice in that particular way. And then when we do that, we actually feel more shame because we think there's something wrong with us. And that's just simply not true. It's just that we haven't yet had the opportunity to build emotional resilience for that area, right? Of that area of discomfort beyond that middle safe spot, right? Before we get into the freeze response. So, of course, you have internal conflict about an increased mental load, right? You're being asked to behave in a way that feels in opposition to your values, possibly, or at least really uncomfortable based on your peer group and how you were raised. Of course, we detach in these moments because our mind's trying to keep us safe, and confidence and self promotion are dangerous. Think about just, I won't go into my whole thing on it, but I love to use the example. Think about a 13-year-old girl who says, I'm so pretty at a slumber party with all of her girlfriends. Like, she's not saying the other girls aren't pretty. She's not saying she's prettier. She's just saying she's pretty. And everyone might agree in that moment, but you know what's going to happen to her down the line. And that's like trying to keep someone as part of the group and keep them safe with this. No, we want to keep you humble because humbleness is valued over confidence. And if you get overconfident, bad things will happen to you. And then, of course, we feel isolated on anything where it feels like something that's so hard for us comes so easily to other people. Of course, we're going to feel crappy in that situation. What happens when we stay in this? The ongoing stress of not wanting to go against our values while blaming ourselves instead of supporting ourselves, right? That's going to create a lot of ongoing stress where you're like, just say something, just say something in every single meeting. And you get out of the meeting, you're like, oh, you're so stupid. You didn't say anything again. Like, why are you so lame? Or we detach, we shut down. So we get so tired of thinking about it that we're just like, I'm never going to say anything. It's fine. I give up. And then what we're doing is we're depriving our colleagues of our contributions and being able to celebrate our accomplishments. So this is why we want to build that emotional resilience so that we can participate. Because what happens is when we think we can't find and use our voice is we prove that true by our actions. And that's the thing that we really want to interrupt. So, the tips to try. So, I highly recommend, and I do this with a lot of my clients, and some of them get really annoyed, but it's a dare of the day. So, these are very low stakes things to low stakes. Hopefully, that's how we'll see what AI, the transcript does with that. These are low stakes things to do every day to build your emotional resilience. So this can be like asking a stranger for a dollar, giving someone just randomly on a busy sidewalk that you've never met an outrageous compliment, riding an elevator or escalator backwards, or doing something on public transportation that's just facing the opposite way, right? These are really low stakes things. If singing karaoke terrifies you, go do that. Things where your body will tell you that you're in danger but you're not. And then you get on the other side and you're like, yes, I totally just asked for a free cup of coffee. They said no, but I did it. I did the thing. And these are the things that you want to do. This is how you get to catch up with the kids that were socialized that like competition and failure was just no big deal. This is where you get to catch up with the folks who grew up in a household where there was a lively debate every night or whatever it is. This is how you build that same amount of resilience so that when you get in the situations where the stakes are higher, you are more familiar with that discomfort, right? What we're doing is if this is the safe zone and this is discomfort zone, we're just building low stakes things so that we get to spend more time there and just get more used to it so that we understand that even though our brain is flooding our bodies with adrenaline and cortisol and that makes us think we are in like mortal peril, we actually aren't. So that was that one. All right. Ooh, we did good on time today. Awesome. All right, y'all. Hey, Lisa. Hey, Hell. I didn't get to see y'all jumped in. Okay. Hi, Jody. Okay. Ashley said such good advice. Last month, one of my daily dares was to let me see. Stay here to network. I didn't die, and it was actually amazing. All right, Ashley. We'll see you next week. All right. Let me stop the live stream. But if you're on the live stream and you want to hop over, you should do that right now because we're about to give this an end.